All right, so hi everyone. Thank you for coming back from lunch to this session on a .NET chatbot walks into a bar, which unsurprisingly is about chatbots. Now, I'm sure most of you have some experience with chatbots, and I'm also sure that at least some of you have these impressions of them whenever you see them. I mean, sometimes they look something like this. This is a weather bot I found, and goes, "It will be cloudy today in San Francisco, but no rain, right? Excuse me? You heard me, will there be rain? Excuse me? Rude, excusez-moi, it's trying it French, but it's not working very well." Or this chatbot, which is also a weather bot. They're very popular weather bots. And it says, "Hi, I'm a weather bot, what is your zip code?" And to that, the user replied, "What is your name?" Now, I'm sure the developer who programmed this bot didn't plan on the user asking, "What is your name?" at this stage. And then the bot says, "I'm sorry, that is not a valid zip code, please try again." And it goes on and on and on. "I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, and I'm sorry." And at this point, this is what you're probably thinking of doing to this bot. But chatbots can actually be pretty good if they're done correctly. So for example, we have this bot from eBay where the user says, "I'm looking for a black Herschel bag under 80 bucks, which style, backpack," and we got a suggestion. Or this nice little bot from British Airways that I found, which is planned to work with emojis. So as you can see, the bot is asking questions, and the user is responding with emojis, and this is actually working. So this is like a nice experience. And then when you encounter more and more good bots, in quotes, so I think, well, why am I not doing this? And this is what this session is for. During this session, we're going to see and learn about the Azure Bot Service, which is one way of building a bot using .NET. There are many other platforms to do it, but we're going to talk about Azure Bot Service. We're going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Cognitive Services, which help us build intelligent bots. And down the very end, we're going to add a little bit of speech. So my name is Eran Stiller. I'm from Israel. I'm CTO of a company called Code Value, Microsoft Azure MVP. It's my first time here in Russia. I like it so far. So I'm having a great time. Hope you will too at the end of this session. But before I dive into chatbots, first of all, what is a chatbot? A chatbot is another form of user experience, with what we call natural language user interface, where the user expresses himself or herself with a natural language using phrases and sentences, and the program tries to react and act accordingly. Now, we can integrate a chatbot in various platforms. We can add it to our web app. We can add it to our mobile app. But more interestingly, we can add it to other platforms where we are not present today. These platforms include social networks such as Facebook, messaging apps such as WhatsApp, Telegram, Skype, Slack, Teams, you name it. These are all platforms where the native interface is textual, the user will use to typing, and have APIs for you to add your bot and be integrated with them so the user can interact with you on those platforms. Now, not only that, today we have various personal assistants which are popular around the world, starting from Amazon Alexa or Google Home or Cortana. And you can also integrate your app, your bot, into those platforms as well, giving you a very broad reach. And that's what we want to achieve with a chatbot. Now, during this session, I'm going to build a bot right here on stage. We're going to start from scratch, and I'm going to build it as we continue. We're going to build the bartender. This bot can recommend a beer, it can order you a beer, and it can remember your last drink. This is what we want to do. This is our scenario. Now, the architecture is very simple. You have a user. The user is going to interact with our bot. It doesn't really matter on which platform, as long as it's supported by the Azure Bot Service, and we're going to talk about it later on. The bot on the back end uses some sort of beer API, which I'll show you. Just a simple API giving lists of beers and breweries and all kinds of information on beer. And it's based on a beer database, which is actually an open source beer database. You can go and download it and do your own demos if you want. It's pretty cool. And let's see how it works before we get started. So let's look at the code. By the way, all the code I'm showing you today is open source. It's on GitHub. You'll have the link at the end of the session. And we have our beer API. It's a very simple web API, ASP.NET Web API. As you can see, we have various controls here. Let's just open the beer controller. Nothing special about it. Let me run it just to show you what it does. Let's open the Swagger page and go away. And here we go. We have a bunch of APIs. For example, I can get the list of categories. Let's try it out. Try it. Oh. Execute. And here we go. We have British ale, Irish ale, North American ale, and so on. And we can get the beers and breweries. And this is what our bot is based on. This is the backend. We assume this is existing. And let's build a bot on top of that. OK. So what does the bot look like? What is the bot supposed to do? Let's look at the conversation view. What is the conversation that we intend to have for our user? So a user comes in, he walks into the bar, and is presented with, we call it a root dialogue. It's something similar to an opening screen, like a splash screen, or welcome, what do you want to do, something like that. Then the user can choose. They can ask to be recommended a beer, in which case they can choose if they want to order by beer category, by beer origin, or by beer name. Once they are recommended a beer, they can order it. And they can order it. They can also order a chaser, like a vodka or whiskey. And they can also order a side dish. And they can get some help. Never forget the help. A lot of the time, the user asks, OK, what can I do? And you have to tell them, OK, you can do this and that. So this is the app or the chatbot that we want to build. And in order to build it, we're going to use the Azure Bot Service. Now, the Azure Bot Service is a service running on Azure whose main purpose is to allow you to integrate your bot, your code, along with various channels. Now, you can see here on the screen, you can see web chat, email, Facebook, Skype, Slack, Telegram, Twilio, and the list goes on. These are not the only ones. And the idea is that you integrate your bot once with the Azure Bot Service, and it takes care of the integration with all of these other providers, and all you have to do is choose which platforms you want to be available on and perform the necessary registration steps, which are different for each platform. But that's about it. You write your code only once. The Azure Bot Service takes care of all the integration part for you. On the back end, you have your code. Now, your code is exposed as a web service, a standard REST HTTP API. And there's a specific format of messages. And luckily for you, you don't have to write them yourself. You can use something that's called the Bot Builder SDK. I'm going to talk about it later on, which takes care of all of the communication. You can use Microsoft Cognitive Services, which, like I said, are a bunch of services on Azure which allow you to write more intelligent apps. We'll get to that. And you can use other services, such as the beer API and the beer database that we have. So this is the idea from a top-level view. Now, when you want to build a bot using the Azure Bot Service, there are two ways for you to do that. You can do it the hard way, which means do it yourself. Choose any platform, any technology, any tool that you like, implement the REST API which you're required to implement, and go ahead. That's definitely possible. The other way, which I'll show you today, is using the Bot Builder SDK. Now, in this session, all the samples are built using the Bot Builder SDK version 3, which is the latest production version. It's available for both .NET and Node.js. About a week ago, an initial alpha of the version 4 of the SDK was released. It's still not recommended for production use, but do note that it exists. Once it's available in release, in production, it will be available in .NET Core, Node.js, Python, and Java. So you'll be able to choose which platform you want to run on. So how does this SDK look like, and how do we use it? Well, first of all, we have dialogues. That's the basic concept we need to understand. And we need to understand that dialogues are for bots, like screen are for apps. Imagine a typical mobile app that you're building. to do what we want to do. You'll have like an opening screen, and then you have a screen for ordering a beer and a screen for recommending a beer, and the entire app will be going back and forth between these various screens. The same thing goes for bots, only here we call it dialogue. When the user comes in, we'll introduce them with a root dialogue, which asks them, okay, what do you want to do? Give them some help, some guidance. We'll have a recommendation dialogue, which takes care of all the business logic of recommending a beer, and we'll have an order dialogue in order to take care of the business logic for ordering a beer. Now, it's important to note that dialogues are serialized into a stack. Now, what that means is, much like in a mobile app, when you navigate to another screen, usually it goes into a stack. When you go into a screen, you go into a screen. When you want to go, you can always go back, and you go up the application stack. The same thing goes with dialogues. Once you call another dialogue and it ends, it comes back to the dialogue which called it, and you can continue from there. And you'll see it in the code once we start writing it. In order to implement a dialogue in .NET, you have to implement one interface. It's called iDialog, and it has one method. Start async takes a context. In this method, you can write whatever you want, go get data, calculate things, whatever it really is that you need to do. And using the context, you can drive the conversation forward. The context exposes various methods, such as wait, if you want to wait for user input, done to signal that your work is done, fail to signal failure, forward and call to call another dialogue, and so on, and use these methods to drive the conversation forward. Now, when you call a dialogue, for example, here in the root dialogue, we have an example that if a user wants to order beer, we'll see this in a second, you can call the order dialogue, and you can provide a callback for when the dialogue is completed to move to another state. Once the beer was ordered, you want to move to a beer ordered state and perform some other business logic. So you can model some sort of a state machine. In order to test your code, you don't need to deploy it and run it on the cloud every time and use some other platforms. You can download this bot framework emulator, run it on your machine. It runs with both Windows and Mac. And it allows you to interact with your bot, and also allows you to see all the HTTP messages going back and forth from your bot to the apps, to the bot service. Okay, so let's start building our bot. So let's close the Beer API. And as you can see, we have another project here. It's called the Beer Bot. It's an ASP.NET Web API project. Again, only this time it's full .NET, not .NET Core. SDK version 3 only supports full .NET framework at this stage. And we have one controller, messages controller, which is a standard Web API controller. And it has one method. You have to implement only one method for post, which receives something called activity and returns a result. Now, this activity can be either some sort of system message, such as a user was added to conversation, a user was removed from the conversation, a user asked to delete his information in regards to privacy, and so on, and you can handle those. But the main activity type is a message, meaning a user wrote a message, and we should respond with something. And in response to this message, we create a root dialog, like I told you. Now, this root dialog implements iDialog. It has one method, start async. And what we do here is we wait for the initial message from the user, and then we run this code. Now, I have a breakpoint here. Let's run this. Let's see what it does. It's not that complex. OK, so I ran it with a debugger. Let's let it load. Oh, go away. Let's connect to our bot. This is the bot framework emulator. And you can see, hi there, user. Welcome to your friendly neighborhood bartender. This is a message I wrote in the messages controller. I didn't show it to you, but in the message controller, when the user is added to a conversation, we write out this message. Now, let's do something. Let's say hi to get started. So after we waited for a message, we said we want to go to initial message received async, which is this method. So we get here, we get the message, which is indeed, if we open it up and go inside, look for the text, it says hi. Here, property called text, it says hi. And right now I have here a very simple regular expression. If the user said something that includes hi, hello, or hola, I'm going to say, howdy, how can I help you? If the user said something like bye and then said so soon, see you later. Otherwise, I'm going to go to another step. Message received async. Why? Because I only want to respond hi once, because this is my business logic. That's what I wanted to do. And what I'm specifying, if the user said hi, then post howdy, how can I help you? And then wait for another message, and when it comes, go to message received async, which is not initial message received. It's another method down here. Let's put a breakpoint here. Let's continue. Let's free up the breakpoint. Okay, it said howdy, how can I help you, which is what we sent. And I can say, let's say, for example, I want to order a beer. Okay, our breakpoint is hit, indeed, in message received async. And again, a very simple regular expression. Right now, I didn't do anything too complicated. I said if the user wrote something that includes the word order, then post back, ordering will be available soon, because I didn't implement it yet. And that's about it. So I can also ask, I want you to recommend a beer. I think I have a typo. We'll talk about typos later on. Again, the breakpoint. Let's remove it. Go away. Here also. Okay, recommendations are almost here and so on. Notice that if I write hi again, it won't understand what I want because I only handled hi for the first message. Because, again, that's what I decided to do. You can do something different. So again, get a message, send a message back. That's all I've done so far. But let's start making this interesting. I want to write a dialog for recommending a beer. And we said we can recommend a beer either via by category, by name, or by country, by origin. And we could use the standard API I just showed you, where I can do context wait, context call, context forward, and so on. And for simple scenarios, it's good enough. But the problem is that if I want to handle a complex scenario, like the scenario I want to do now, that I have several options, and each option has some sub-options in it, each one has a different flow, then it could be a bit tricky to maintain and read it and update it over time and so on. For that, we have something that's called the chain API. The chain API is a Fluent API, which is used something like this. We start with the class chain, and then we say from. For example, here, I'm using a pre-built dialog from the Bot Builder SDK. It's called prompt choice, where I give the user several choices by category, by origin, by beer name, sorry. And then, once I get back the result, the choice, notice I have a switch statement. I say, if the user chose category, go here. If the user chose origin, go here, and so on. And I return the result. And if I go and look at the code which implements this, I'm going to step to the beer recommendation phase. Let's let it. Okay, Visual Studio, taking its time. And here we go. So I'm going to open up the recommendation dialog. But before I do that, in the root dialog, you should see that if the user chose to recommend a beer, then we go ahead and say context call recommendation dialog. We go and handle the call to that dialog like showing up another screen. In the recommendation dialog, we have this chain. And if I look, for example, at the case, let's remove this, where the case where the user chose category, then we call category recommendation, sorry. And what is category recommendation, if I drill down? As you can see, it's another dialog starting from chain where I said, go and get the categories from the beer API and prompt the user which category do they want. Once that's done, continue with get the category, get the styles associated with that category, ask the user, what style do you like? And then go ahead and choose beer, which is another dialog, which I can show you here. Basically, it goes, reads the beers from the database, and prompts the user for a choice. So this is what it does. I could have wrote it in one single big chain API call, but it would have been hell to read and to understand, so I broke it up. And if I run it now, you'll be able to see that. Let's restart. And let's say I want a recommendation, so I'm going to write recommend, because as you saw, it's a regular expression. It doesn't really matter what I write, as long as I write this word. And then I got a choice, by category, by origin, or by name. I can either click these, or I can write it, say, by category. It doesn't really matter. And then we get the categories, and I can click here. I can click one of the styles that I got, and he asks me which one of these works. And he offers me 3 beers which match this style and category. So I can click one. And do you want to order it? No, not yet. I can do it again. Let's choose this time. If I choose by origin, then the logic is different. It goes and gets 5 countries with beers, 5 random countries, and I can choose one. For example, Sweden. Offers me a beer, which brewery, sorry. And it says, okay, this time we have only one beer. We have a beer called Vrak. Do you want to order that? No, not yet. Okay, so we implemented a bit more complex flow for recommending a beer. But we can do some more things. Oops, sorry. Activated the wrong application. Here we go. What if all we want to do is get a bunch of input from our user? For example, think about ordering a beer. What do you want to get from the user? You want to get the name of the beer, the name of the dish they want to eat, pretzels, fries, whatever, the name of the chaser, and that's it. And this scenario is very common. Imagine ordering, reserving a hotel room, reserving a table at a restaurant, ordering anything. A lot of times, all you want to do is have a form with a bunch of properties and let the user fill them in. For that, we have something that's called the Form Flow API. It's very simple to use. All I have to do is create a class. This time I call it beer order. It's a standard .NET class. I said I want to get the beer name, which is a string. I want to get a chaser, which is an enum, and a side dish, which is also an enum. I can also customize the look and feel. Prompt is one of the options. I can also add other customizations. I don't have to. It has its own set of defaults. And then when I create a dialog, all I have to do is create new form dialog of beer order and give it the initial class. And that's it. Once I do this, the bot builder will automatically go with the user over all of the properties and fill them in one by one. Now, can you imagine what this does, assuming the value here is not null? Can anybody guess? You remember that what happens if I start with a beer recommendation flow? I want to go straight to the beer ordering flow. But if I recommended a beer to the user, I don't want to ask them again, what beer do you want to order, because it's already known. So what this does, for example, is that if I know some of the parameters in advance, I can fill them in, and the bot framework is smart enough to not ask the user again the same question. This will come in very handy when we'll add natural language processing in a later demo. So let's see how this works quickly. Let's open up the code. Go to the beer order branch. Okay. And let's go to our order dialog. And this time, as you see, we have the beer order. We have a chaser, which is an enum. Again, we can customize the look and feel of it. Describe is one of the properties we can customize. We can customize other things as well. We have a side dish, this time without customization. And all we have to do when we create the dialog is create a new form dialog of beer order, and that's it. I also have a way here to customize some of the business logic. So for example, here I have a customization where I say, for the field beer name, I want to add some validation logic, because the chaser and side dish are enums. The bot framework can validate this for me. But if I enter a beer, maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe there's a duplicate name or something. I need to ask the user what do they want. So I need to add my own custom validation logic. This is where it comes in. Basically what it does, it goes to the beer API and searches for a beer, and if it found a match, it returns a result. If it didn't find a match, it lets the user know there's a problem here. And if I go ahead and run this now, let's go to the emulator, retry, restart, sorry. Say I want to order a beer. So ask me, what beer would you like? This is, remember the prompt I wrote over the property. And let's say Heineken, for example. And what would you like next to your beer? So I can either click or I can write. So I can choose, for example, vodka. And let's say I want some fries with it. And your order of Heineken and vodka with fries is coming right up. So it correctly captured all of the information. But if I start with the beer recommendation flow, let me show you, and I set up a breakpoint here, this place in code. Sorry. Let me set up a breakpoint here on the recommendation, and I want to set up a breakpoint here so you can see what's going on. Let's debug this. Okay. Let's restart. Yeah, the beer bot is not up yet. Here we go. So let's say I want to recommend a beer. So we're in a root dialog. What's going to happen is we're going to get to the regular expression which says recommend, and we're going to call the recommendation dialog. And it says, once the recommendation dialog is over, please continue with be recommended, which is over here. Let's go on. So we're going over the recommendation process. Let's choose, again, by origin. Let's choose a French beer. Go with this one. And let's choose this beer. OK, our breakpoint is hit. Beer recommended. So as you can see, let's continue a little bit onwards. We have here recommended beer from boys, which is what we chose. And now we created prompt dialog. We want to confirm again. This is a pre-built dialog, a yes/no question. We don't have to code it ourselves, where we ask, would you like to order the beer? And we continue with complete beer recommendation, which is here. So let's release the breakpoint. I'm going to click yes, I want to order. Complete beer recommendation. And should order yes, because we answered yes. And then this root dialog calls call order dialog. And we provide it with the recommended beer in advance. So once we hit this, we can see that our beer name was indeed provided from boys. We start the same process of ordering a beer, but notice it didn't ask me the name of the beer this time, because we already have it. So I can choose this time water and fries. And here we go, your order from boys and water with fries is coming right up. Okay, so we got this flow up and running, which is great. We stop the debugger. Let's get out the next step and continue. Oh, here we go. So far, we've only done textual messaging, but sometimes text is not enough. We want to provide richer media. We want to provide, for example, here we want to provide a picture of the beer we just recommend to the user because it gives a much stronger impression. Or we want to show a map, or we want to show several pictures of an item in a catalog. Or maybe we want to finalize a purchase, we want to get credit card details, so we want to show something that's specialized for getting payment details after the user. So luckily for us, we can do all of that with a framework called rich cards or adaptive cards. And the way this works, it provides us several pre-built templates. For example, this template is called the hero card. A hero because the image is like the hero of the message. And all we have to do is specify what do we want to display. For example, in here, the image and the descriptions. And the bot service will automatically render this card accordingly in each platform where we connect. So in Facebook, it would look native to Facebook. In Teams, it would look native to Teams. In Slack, in Telegram, and so on. We don't need to take care of it, of the rendering itself. We just need to say what we want to show. And in order to get the image, I'm using here Microsoft Cognitive Services. Microsoft Cognitive Services is a group of services from Microsoft, which provide various services around vision, if you want to understand images, computer vision, around speech, which we'll show later on. And what I want to do here is search. And I'm going to use an API called Bing Image Search to search for images. We give it a query string, it returns an image URL. And this is what the code is going to do. Once a beer is recommended, we're going to add this to the root dialog. We're going to wait for the beer. We're going to go to the search service, going to search an image for the beer name, create a card, give it the title, the description, and most importantly, the image URL that we just got from the image service. Create a message and send it to the user. That's all we have to do. We don't have to say how we want to display. We just want to say what we want to display and give the name of the template. And if I run this, and let's go back to the recommendation dialog, go to the top, here we go. We have the prompt dialog, we have the switch I showed you earlier, the different options, and then we have continue with here. So let's run this with the debugger attached. Go to our bot, let's refresh. Okay, it's loading up, here we go. Recommend a beer. Okay, we don't need this breakpoint anymore. We don't need this either. Okay, let's say I want by name, and let's give it a name, let's give it Corona. So we found several options for Corona, because there are several brands, so let's choose Corona Golden Ale. And the beer was selected. We get the beer, the chosen beer, which is Corona Golden Ale. We go and search for the image, and this is very simple actually. All it does, if I go to the implementation of this method, go to implementation, is it goes to this URL, Cognitive Microsoft Bing v7 image search, and performs a get with the query we want to do. It's that simple. All you have to do is provide your API key. You get an API key when you register in Azure. And if I run this, you'll see that we indeed get a URL like we expected. Once we have this URL, we can add the card. Let's run this. We don't need these breakpoints anymore. And this is the image we got. Okay, we didn't search for like correct images or something, but you can see, get the hang of it. Come on, no more breakpoints, I don't need them. Let's try again. Let's go by beer name. Let's try Heineken. Okay, you don't need the breakpoint. And you see, I got the picture of the beer. Obviously, I could have resized it and processed it, but you get the hang of it. So we added some images. So that's nice. We can have a much nicer, richer user experience. Oh. Sorry. One other thing we can do in order to enrich the user experience is give an indication of typing. Now, I just jumped 2 slides ahead. Got the point before. Your users know that they're talking to a bot. And they're not stupid. You're also not hiding it. And the one thing they expect of bots is that they would run fast. They don't expect them to give smart results, but they do expect them to run fast because it's a machine. A machine doesn't take time to do things. It just responds. But sometimes you have to do things which are out of your control. You have to go to the Bing image search to get images. You have to go to the database. You have to call an external service. These things take time. During this period, the user just sits there and waits. Okay, what's happening? And they think that something is broken, and they might refresh or something, and then you lost the entire session. The one thing you can do to improve this, so a user won't get this experience, is adding an indicator. You know that feeling when you use Skype or WhatsApp or whatever, and it says someone else is currently typing while they're typing, and gives you the impression that, okay, they got your message, now they're doing something? You can do exactly the same. You can give an indication that your bot is typing, in quotes. Now, when you think about it, it's relatively stupid because the bot is not typing anything. But it gives the user psychologically the feeling that you're actually doing something useful for them while they're waiting. And the way this is done is also very simple. Wherever you want, you create a message, you say this is a typing message, and you post it to the user. That's it. If you do that before, let's say you go to the Bing image search, or you know you have a heavy call, or you can even do some more advanced logic, like if the call you just made takes more than 1 second, then I want to send this notification so the user will know that something is happening, then it will work. And let's stop the debugger. If I check out this branch, and here we go. Notice I'm sending the typing notification right before I go to the image search. Don't add the delay in your code. This is just to be able to see what I'm doing. If I run this right now, and let's go ahead, refresh this. I want to recommend a beer. Let's go again by name. Let's choose Amstel. I don't know. OK, found the beer, and you saw that little indicator that went back and forth. That said, OK, wait while I'm doing something for you. And then I got back the result. And then it's something very small, but it gives the user a very big difference in their feeling, in their experience of when they're using you, when they're using your app. What about state? So far, our bot doesn't know anything about the user. A user comes in, we ask them what they want to do, we let them do what they want to do, and we move on. Now, in a real scenario, you'll probably want to personalize the experience for a specific user. For example, in our case, what we want to do is when a user comes in, if we know they ordered something already, we want to ask them, do you want to order this again? And you can make this as complex as you want. And for that purpose, we have something that's called a bot state. In the bot, for storing state, we have several session objects. We have, we have user data, which is data about the user. We have conversation data, which is data relevant to a specific conversation, which, remember, I'm only showing you one-on-one scenarios here, but the conversation can have multiple users in once, and can have multiple bots interacting with each other as well. So you have to take that into account. So you can store data for user, for a conversation, or for a specific person in a specific conversation. We can choose the level of granularity that we want to achieve. Now, the session object is basically like a dictionary. It's a key value pair where you can store whatever you want, and it's available on the context object. In order to persist the state, there's something that's called an iBot storage interface. Now, you can implement it yourself and persist the data to wherever you want in your application, or you can use a pre-built provider. The existing ones are in memory, which is used for testing and debugging. This is what I'm doing right now. Obviously, don't use that for production. You have an Azure table storage provider and a Cosmos DB provider, which you can simply configure, and then all the state will be persisted to that provider that you choose. And the way it works is also relatively simple. Let's check out the branch for user data. OK, let's go back to our root dialog. Go to the top. And what we've added right now is that when a user comes in, initial message received async. I chose that only if the user says hi. OK, that's my choice. If the user says hi, I go ahead and go to context.userdata, try get value, and try to get by a key. I have here a constant key. And if something exists there, I'm going to ask, would you like to order your usual something? And on the same note, when a user orders something, after the beer has been ordered, I can go ahead and go context, user data, set value, and remember that piece of data about the user. And now when I run this code, let's go here. I'm coming in the first time, so the bot doesn't know anything about me yet, so I can say hi, but nothing's going to happen. But let's say I want to order, and what beer would you like? Let's go with a Corona again. Okay, let's choose Corona Extra. Okay, and I want a whiskey, and I want the nachos. All right, cool. Now I'm going to walk out. I'm going to refresh. This is like getting back into the bot. And I'm not talking about it here, but there are ways to log in your users and use login mechanisms on various platforms. That's a topic a little bit more advanced. But let's say a user logged in and you have their context. Right now, when I click hi, would you like to order your usual Corona Extra? And all we had to do is set the value and get the value, and obviously configure our state storage, and that's it. And then I can click on yes, and then it will continue. What would you like next to your beer? Because I didn't remember what they ordered next to the beer, but that's a business decision. I could have chosen to remember everything and just provide the entire order. Okay, cool. So now we also have memory. We can recommend a beer, we can order a beer, and it could be very nice and remember what you ordered last time. But so far, all of our processing has been based on regular expressions. You saw, if the user wrote recommend, if the user wrote order, or something like that. But if the user would come in and ask me, what do you have? Or I want a beer, or whatever users might say, then I would say, sorry, what do you want? And then we'd go back to the example I showed you initially, where the user said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, and the user goes away. We want to handle natural language. We want to have a machine learning model which we can build an initial model on, for example, order a beer, recommend a beer, and so on, and then improve that model over time without changing our code. And for that, we have a service which is called LUIS, again, from Microsoft Cognitive Services, which stands for Language Understanding Intelligence Service. Now, using this service, you can build your model, and you can start using it immediately. Now, you'll probably ask me either now or later, does it support Russian? No, unfortunately, it doesn't support Russian at this stage. We can ask Microsoft when will it be supported, but it supports multiple other languages. It supports English, obviously, French, German, Chinese, Portuguese, Spanish, Japanese, and several others. And they keep adding languages, so Russian will probably be available at this stage or another. And the way it works is that once I define my model, I'm going to show you exactly how I define my model. We have a very nice integration. So for example, here I can say lowest intent. If the user intended to say buy, then perform this code. If the user wanted to recommend a beer, then perform this code. And notice that I not only perform the code, I also get the beer name and the category and the brewery and whatever information I can get, so I won't ask the user again. So how does it work? We're going to go to the browser. We're going to go to LUIS.ai, which is the portal where you can access LUIS at this stage. And it will open up. I already have it opened here. Your sign expired, so okay, let's stick with this one. Loading apps. Here you can create a new app. You can give it a name and choose the culture, and you can see the various languages here. But I already created one and called it BeerBot. And when you build an application, you need to define two things. One thing is your intents. What can the user do? So in our case, the user can say bye to go away. He can ask for help. He can greet us, say hi. He can order a beer, and he can recommend a beer. None is a default, which if LUIS didn't understand what the user wanted, he can tell us none. I don't know what the user wanted. In order to create an intent, we write new. We give it a name. And then we need to give several examples. So these are called utterances, as it is written up here. So if I click order beer, You say, I wrote down, give me a beer, I want a beer, I'd like to order a beer, I want a Heineken and some pretzels, give me some beer with fries and water, whatever you can think of that the user might say in order to do this action. Now, you don't have to think about everything. You're building a model. There's a machine learning model behind this that will improve this over time. But the more information you give, the more accurate your model will be, and the better your bot will be. So give all the various utterances that you can think of, and then you go and define your entities. What do we want to extract from these utterances? Let's say we understood that the user wants to order a beer, but maybe they already told us what beer do they want, or what chaser do they want. We don't want to ask them again. We need to get it from the sentence. So we define, we want to extract the beer name, which is a string, and the brewery, which is a string. But we also like to extract the chaser. Now, the chaser is a simpler one because it's a closed list of values. So for example, here it's a list, and I can click here and give all the values, liquor, vodka, water, and I can also give synonyms. So if someone asks for bourbon or scotch, I know it's exactly the same with whiskey. And I do all of this, and I do all of this outside of my application, outside of my code, so I can improve this later on as the app progresses. And once I've defined, and you can also see there are also recommendations here, the things I can add. Okay, so if I didn't think about everything, Louis is smart enough to offer additions. Or if I have country for, I want an American beer or a Russian beer, then I can write here, for example, Netherlands is the same as Dutch, Argentina, Argentinian, Australia, Australian, Aussie, Aussie, all the same. Yes, I can put all the information here. Again, we get recommendations on things we can add, and as you can see, they're actually pretty relevant to what we have here. And once we have the entities defined, we go back to our intents, and let's say we go to order beer, and we go back to the utterances that we had, and we say that Heineken is actually a beer name, and pretzel is a side dish, and water is a chaser. We mark all the things that we want to extract. And then if I look at it like this, you see that I want a beer name and some side dish. Give me some beer with side dish and chaser. And I start tagging all the different phrases I want. And if I go back to my code and get out the natural language version, then you'll be able to see if I open up. Now it's not the same root dialog, it's a different root dialog. It's the root Louis dialog, which inherits, as you can see, Louis dialog. It has another base class. But for example, here we have get help. If the intent was get help and the name here should match, the name here should match the name here, because this is the intent we're going to get. So if get help, call this, buy, call this. Let's go to order beer and set a breakpoint here. Let's run this. Okay. By the way, once I create the model, I can train it, I can test it, and I can also publish it. So I can publish to production, I get an URL and some API keys, and I can incorporate it into my app. But once I have this up and running, let's go back in, and let's say I want a Heineken, with vodka. And as you can see, we got to the order beer, even though I didn't say I want the word order, I said I want a Heineken. That's what I said. And it's trying to get the entities. So you can see beer name, we got Heineken, indeed, the beer name. Sorry, where was I? Let's set the breakpoint here. It will be easier. So we got the beer name, Heineken. We got the chaser, vodka. And we didn't get the side dish because we didn't say what we want. And then I'm going to call create dialog, and I'm going to give the dialog what I have. Now, if you remember in the order dialog, in the form flow, if you fill in the values you already have, it won't ask you for them again. So if I set this free, let's remove the breakpoints. If I set this free, it's going to ask, how about something to eat? Because I didn't say what I want to eat. I said nachos, and then just making sure, is this what you wanted? Heineken, vodka, nachos, and I said, yes. So there you go. I just use natural language to go and talk to my bot, to my bot. And I can say, for example, something like, what do you have? Which is not recommend or something. And it's going to be smart enough to go ahead and recommend me a beer. And this is a much nicer experience. You can get much more value out of it. And not only that, you can improve the model over time because the model can get better and better. I define my intents, I define my entities, but once users start using it, check this out. I have review endpoint utterances. What it's going to show me here is all kinds of sentences which users said over time, and the model thinks I should add to my model to improve it. So for example, for bye, he understood there's say hi, bye-bye, say bye-bye, and these are the current score, but I can say, for example, that bye-bye is indeed bye, and I can add it, and I can add it to bye. And, oh, it's changed, it's already moved away. So you get the picture. I can improve the model over time, retrain it, and my bot will become better and better. And that's very cool already. But up until now, I ran this bot on my machine. I didn't deploy it anywhere. So remember, the bot is a REST API. It's written in ASP.NET Web API. You can host it anywhere you want. You can host it on your own machine, on Azure, on AWS, on wherever you want to. Azure App Service is an easy choice because then it will be hosted right next to the bot, and there are pre-made templates to help you do that. But again, you can do it whatever you want. And once you deploy your bot code, you need to define the channel. So let's just see this in the portal. So if I go to the Azure portal, if you want to create a bot, you go create a resource, write bot, and then you have here several templates. You have the web app bot if you want to host your bot in a web app. You have functions bot if you want to host your bot in Azure Functions, which is also possible. There's not a lot of documentation on it, but it's possible. Or bot channel registration, if all you want to do is register your channels and you want to host your bot somewhere else completely, that's also fine. You choose one of these, you get all the information in. I already created one. So let's go to our beer bot demo. Let's increase the size of the font a bit. And this is my bot. As you can see, web app bot. I can click here. And I can do all kinds of things. So for example, I can go in and configure the channels. You'll be able to see that I've already configured the web chat channel and the Cortana channel. And I can also add various channels like Teams, Skype, email, Slack, Telegram, Twilio, and there are others as well. I can configure everything from here. I can monitor my bot usage, so I can see various statistics. I'm not going to go into the details right now of retentions, how many users, how many messages from every user in each and every platform. I can get various statistics. I can also test it here. So I can do the same from here. I can say, hi there, howdy, how can I help you? And I can say, I want a beer. And then you ask me, what beer would you like? And so on. So I can test it from here as well. And it's basically doing all the communication for me. You define all the channels. That's the main thing to do here, register your channels. But to conclude our demo, I would like to add one more thing to our bot, and that is speech. Okay, so far we've seen text, we've seen some images, we've seen natural language processing, but you can also add speech to your bot. So you can integrate it with, let's say, Cortana, or you can integrate it with Skype, but for voice calls. So user can call your bot and talk to your bot and use it like that, or maybe you want to integrate it with other personal assistants. And actually, it's very simple to add, because all of the methods I've shown you, whether it's the chain API, the regular dialog APIs, almost all of the calls have one, a little bit more complex overload, which takes a lot of properties. And among them, you can say speak and retry speak. Like, what do you want to display? And display, if it didn't work, then you can say speak. And if this didn't work, retry speak. And you can give it a string of what you want to show, what you want to say, but you can also use something that's called SSML, Speech Synthesis Markup Language, with which you can add annotations to what you want to say. So you can, for example, add a break or emphasize things, or say that something should be read by female or male voice, or, like I said here, the language, this is in French. You can annotate and make your speech sound much more natural. You can also display a sound here, as you can see, an MP3 if you want. And once you have that, we can do something very nice. I already have the Cortana channel set up, as I showed you here in channels. You have to go through a registration step and define some API keys. Not something complex, just follow the instructions and you'll get it done in 5 minutes. And then, and here this is the part we need to pray that it will work, okay? Ask BeerBot to recommend a beer. Now you see it said bear box, it didn't understand BeerBot. That's the biggest problem I have with Cortana, it doesn't understand my accent. Let's try this again. Ask BeerBot to recommend a beer. Yeah, now it worked. Okay, I'm getting connected to BeerBot demo because I said BeerBot is
How would you
our
like
bot.
me to recommend your beer? By category, by origin, or by name?
Category. Okay, the internet is a bit slow here, so it takes a little bit of time, but
Which kind of beer do you like?
British ale.
Which style?
Classic English style pale ale. That's the first one on the list.
Which one of these works?
Abbey ale.
I probably drank too much.
Okay.
Which one of these work?
Abbey ale.
Would you like to order Abbey Ale?
No.
So what would you like to do next?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
And it worked. Now, this is amazing that this thing actually worked. Every time I pray that this will work with all the internet and things. And you get the picture. You define your bot once, you get integrated into various platforms such as Cortana, such as Slack, such as Teams, whatever you want. And the key things I want you to take away from this session is that chatbots are another form of UX. You can integrate them in your app, or you can use other platforms like social messaging, messaging apps, personal assistants, and so on. Azure Bot Service and the Bot Builder make it way easier to write your bot, especially if you're using .NET. You don't have to use the SDK, but the SDK really helps. There are other tools out there, but this is one of the options you can consider. And don't forget to add natural language processing to your bot. It makes your bot so much more usable to users. I know it is a problem here with Russian. By the way, I'm from Israel, like I said. We also have the same problem in Hebrew, but a lot of the times English works good enough, or you can use other natural language processing engines and integrate them yourself. So hopefully after the session, you're able to get your bot up to a level where the user cannot detect if you're a human or a very clever chatbot. And that's it. You have the sample code in the slides. You should be getting the slides from the organizer. So the sample is available up there. You saw all of the steps are organized as Git branches, so you can access everything. You have a bunch of links for samples and documentation. And that's it. Thank you very much for coming. I will be available at the discussion zone right now, so I'm going to go there and you can come ask questions. So thank you very much for your time.